Hello, amazing creators. Hello, Nelvin. How are you doing? Nice to
Oh,
see you.
well, good to see you too. Thanks for having me.
So, Facebook was playing some tricks with me today, but nevertheless, we're gonna do this recording, and I'll upload in the group. And if anyone has some questions or comments, then you're welcome to make a comment, and Nelvin will get in touch with you if she can help you with something. And so I'm really excited. I am somebody who is really eager to write my first book. I had made an art book with some illustrations, but I have never written a book. So I mean, I'm going to have this talk with you, from my own perspective as somebody who for whom it's all new. So, Nelly, maybe you want to say a few words about yourself before we start.
Sure. Yes. I am a writer and editor. And in my job, kind of as an editor, I also do some one-on-one book coaching with new authors, and I also teach a introduction to memoir writing class as well. So I have a Master's of Fine Arts in Creative Nonfiction from the University of King's College. So my kind of area of expertise is nonfiction and memoir. And I have one book out so far. It's a memoir called Every Boy I Ever Kissed. And I'm working
Ooh.
on a second book.
Wow, that sounds spicy. It sounds
Yeah,
really intriguing, right? Is it
yeah,
spicy?
a little bit, a little bit.
Yeah.
Although it's, less so than a lot of people assume. But Owens, yeah. Yeah.
But I guess there's some interesting stories to tell. Oh my God, it already inspires me for an idea for another book. Interesting. So, um, yeah, tell me about some of the challenges that when you're coaching your clients, from your experience, what are those challenges for writers who are starting to work on their dream, on their big aspiration? What
Yeah.
are those?
Yeah, challenges. That's a great question. there are a few. Um, I would say probably the biggest one for everyone is self-doubt or imposter syndrome or feeling like maybe they're not talented or they're not creative enough. Um, and I see that pretty much across the board in everyone, regardless of what they're writing, what their experience is. And I also see it in people who have already published books. I mean,
Yeah.
in my writers group, we're all um, people with master's degrees in writing. We're all people who have published books before, and we all still have to deal with, you know, doubt and fear and avoidance sometimes. So that's the biggest, probably the biggest thing that I see across the board. So um, I spend a lot of time working on that with people.
Do you think that has something to do with the inner critic, that we are too judgmental with towards ourselves?
I think so, definitely. We are typically our own worst critic.
Yeah.
Um, I almost, I don't think I've ever worked with a writer who hasn't sent me a chapter or a scene of their work and said, oh, this isn't very good. I know this and this and this and this and this is wrong with it. And they put in all these disclaimers and I go, okay, well, let's see. And I open up the document and it's never as bad as
Hmm.
they have, think it is, or as they've said in their email. Like it's every time it's always better than they think. And once in a while you'll get somebody who's too confident, and those are the ones that maybe need a little bit more work. But yeah, I think
Cool.
we're all critical, especially when we do creative work, because it is a very vulnerable thing to do, especially with memoir and nonfiction, because you kind of have to put yourself out there. So I think it's normal to feel insecure, and especially with anything new. A lot of people come to writing um, as something that they didn't necessarily study in school. So they maybe come to it later in life or without a lot of training. So that also, I think, can create some self-doubt and criticism as well, or internal criticism.
Yeah, and what would be like your first question to them when somebody approaches you and they're like, "I want to write a book." What would you ask them?
Great question. So I first ask people what type of book they'd like to write because there's so many. So the first thing is kind of narrowing down, fiction or nonfiction for children, for adults. Do you want to write a memoir? Do you want to write, a sci-fi? So that's kind of the first question is what type of book do you want to write? And then I typically ask a couple kind of softball questions that are a bit easier before I then ask kind of the most important question, which is a bit more of a heavy hitter. So then I might ask, have you written before? Have you taken any writing classes before? So I get a sense of kind of where they're at in their journey as writers or as creative people, because everyone, is coming from a different place, and you kind of need to work with people with where they're at. But then the big question is, I phrase it in different ways, but it's some version of uh, why do you want to write this book?
Yeah. Wow.
And
So
what it,
important, right?
yeah, exactly. I think it's really important,
And
especially.
then, sorry.
No, go ahead. Sorry.
So that gives you an idea also how you can help that person better to achieve that
Yeah,
dream, right?
yeah, definitely. And it's also really important for the writer to have an idea of the answer to that question, which, and the answer might change as the writing process goes on, and that's fine. But I think it's really important for a writer at the beginning of the process to have a clear understanding of what their goal is so that they can have some type of sense of direction with the project, because it is a very overwhelming long-term project. So
Mm-hmm.
having a sense of purpose can really help with some of that initial overwhelm. But also, I teach people to write reader-focused narratives. I really believe that we create for others because we believe that we have something that we can offer others and perhaps hopefully help other people with. So I always like to ask people, what they hope to achieve with their book and what they hope to communicate to readers and what they might um, want to help other people with. And I think that gets to the heart of the theme of the book, but it also gives them a really strong feeling of purpose. If they're like, wow, if I could help one person with what I'm
Yeah.
doing, that can help you overcome a lot of the fear.
Yeah. So, for example, somebody whose aspiration is to create their first kids book.
Mhm.
Yeah. Then is there a way how you would then help them to connect in a way with that child, or get closer to that audience through thinking about their project in a certain way?
Yeah, definitely. I don't typically do a lot of work with children's authors, but I think that the principle would be the same,
Mm-hmm.
where I always ask people to think about, who are you writing for? Who is your target audience? And of course, other people are going to find your book and read it, hopefully, and that's wonderful. But if you can think about who you're writing for and what sort of hole or you can fill or question you can answer or topic you might be able to help them with. So, for example, with my book, um, so I basically ask people, who are you writing for? Who is your ideal reader? Who is your target audience? And so with my book, for me, I wrote this, dating memoir about my life from ages 11 to 21. So in my mind, I knew that I was writing for, the 17-year-old girl that I used to be, who wished I could have had a book like this when I was 17, and maybe I wouldn't have made so many
Yeah,
mistakes.
cool.
So when it got hard, I just thought about, that 17-year-old girl, and I thought about myself at 17 and what it would have meant to me, um, to have had something kind of like this available in my life. And that kind of helped with a lot of that other stuff of the self-doubt and the criticism. And it gave me kind of a sense of purpose.
Yeah, nice. And do you think that there are also some steps in between, like in the process? So the idea, the audience, do check in with that audience while you're on the journey? Do you sort of, can you test, if I can say it in that way, your work with the audience before the work is ready and published?
Yeah, that's some people, as a lot of people do that. Some people, there's lots of different ways to approach the process. Um, so some people will have a draft complete of the book, and then they will send it to what people call beta readers, which are kind of they're not professional editors. They're just people who probably read a lot and know a lot about kind of storytelling and good books, and so you can get kind of initial feedback from them. So that is definitely an option that a lot of people pursue. Yeah.
That's nice. And what do you think are those keys, if you can share some of us, for the book to sell, so that we are writing and we are making an impact with our work, so that we know that this book will be in the right hands and people will buy it?
Yes. So number one is that in traditional publishing in particular, it is very often about luck and timing. So, there's only so much you can do, but you can do everything you can to make the chance as good as possible for yourself and position yourself, in the best possible position so that your book sells. So I really, this kind of comes back to my central question about what is your purpose? What is the thematic thrust of the book? What are you offering to people? People spend, $20 to $30 on a book, but more importantly, they spend 8 to 10 or more hours of their life reading. So I think from the beginning, if you want to write a book that people are going to want to read and that's going to sell, you have to think about, what are you going to be giving the reader for their $30 and 8 to 10 hours? Maybe it's a really good entertaining story. Maybe it's insight into something that they didn't understand before. Maybe it's validation that their own experience is, normal and okay. Maybe it's education on a new topic that they've never studied before. I mean, it can be any number of things. So I always come back to this idea as kind of the main way to write a book that sells is write a book that gives something to the people that you're trying to sell it to, right? And I think it's kind of the same as any marketing. If anyone watching is a business owner or has ever taken even one marketing class,
what problem are you solving?
What problem are you solving? And how are you helping people? I think sometimes as creative people, we hear a lot about, creativity as self-expression and this emphasis on the self. And yes, of course, a piece of creative work is inherently of you, but it's of you as sort of a gift to someone else. So I think really focusing on other people who you're creating for is kind of the best way. And so then in practical terms, along the way, there's kind of a lot of different ways to break that down, with everything from what you put on the back of the book to how you write the story, and that's a whole long thing I teach, but if you make it about the reader instead of yourself, I think that's the biggest kind of overarching principle.
I think it's amazing how the same principle applies to everything. It's like in business, so cool. And I wanted to ask you, let's say if I'm starting to write my book, are there some things I have to do before the book is ready in terms of marketing and communication, or I can just wait until it's done and then start my marketing and communication activities? What is the best approach?
Yeah, well, it depends if you are looking to pursue self-publishing or traditional publishing. They're a little bit different approaches, but I would say that it's probably never a bad thing to start building your audience and start a platform. You want to find a balance between building your audience and building your platform. And also, you don't want to tell people so much about your book that they're sick of hearing about it by the time it's available, right?
Of course, you want to make them excited, right? On the way already. Yeah.
Exactly. So you want to build some anticipation, you want to get people eager to buy it, and you want to get people pre-ordering, but you also don't want to be doing that for 6 months and then everyone is sick of hearing about it and they can't buy it, and then they forget. You want the click to buy link and the click to pre-order link. So I would say probably as soon as the book can be pre-ordered,
Mm,
um, definitely you can start, pumping it up and telling people about it because they can take action right away, right? If they can't take action right away, they might forget about it or get bored of hearing about it. But even before that pre-order, or if you're not doing pre-order, that sales button is ready to go, you can still be building your audience in other ways, right? So, you know, again, this is kind of same in any marketing where you kind of lay the foundation and offer a lot of value to your audience before you have something to sell, right?
yeah.
So again, it's kind of similar. So I post a lot on my Instagram. I just post, book reviews, or I post about the writing life and struggles that I have, or successes that I have, or things I've learned along the
Mm,
way, or, you know, and then when I have a book available, I'll throw in a couple posts about that. And
mm-hmm.
so it's always a good time to be building your audience, but you don't, you kind of just want to follow the same marketing principles of
Yeah.
any small business.
Yeah, cool. And I want to also touch on my favorite topic of intuition. I mean, I'm talking so much about it because I know the tremendous value of that for a creative entrepreneur. Actually, I think for anyone, but especially for a creative entrepreneur to listen to our intuition, to follow with the flow and inspiration. Um, I am myself familiar with the practice of downloading
Mhm.
words and information because I love being efficient. So, I do tricks like that with myself. If I have to prepare something quickly, I just open up my channel and I download the words. Um, do you also use this approach or this method in your own practice when you write?
Yeah, I do. There's what we call often in writing world is free writing.
Yeah.
Uh, so you may have heard of it. It's this idea that basically, as you say, you just kind of brain dump or download, and you don't let yourself free writing. Typically, you kind of put a timer and you tell yourself you're not going to stop until the timer goes off, like 3 minutes, 5 minutes, kind of a short period of time. So I do that all the time. It's the first thing I teach. It's like the first slide on day
Wow.
one of my introduction to
Yeah.
memoir course. Yeah. It's the reason why I don't really believe in writer's block. Um, I believe in having struggles in your writing and getting stuck and not knowing what to write or not knowing how to fix a plot hole. But you're always capable of putting words on the page, even if they're not very good words. I don't really think it's impossible to do so. And so when you get stuck, or even
Yeah.
if you don't get stuck, if you just want to clear your head, yeah, I think I could go on and on. I think free writing is a really great tool. And sometimes it ends up in the recycling bin, and sometimes you type it up and rework it and it becomes part of your book, or a short story or whatever. So I think it's a really powerful tool, and I think it's really freeing,
Yeah.
especially when you feel like, oh, I don't know what to write today. Well, just write anything. And then after 5 minutes, you might have 300 words, and it kind of just shows you that you can do this. It's
Wow,
not
this
as
is
hard.
awesome. This is an amazing tip, actually. Amazing tip from you. And it's very interesting what you said about that you don't believe in the writer's block.
Yeah.
Also, I really love that perspective. What if that doesn't even exist? What if it's just like our assumption that there is such thing as a writer? It's like with creative energy, we have abundance of that. We are like an instrument just receiving that, and there's like always it's always available for us. And
Absolutely.
right?
We might
So
have anxiety around our writing that's causing us to avoid it.
yeah,
Like a lot of things that could be going on, but I don't think we're ever incapable of putting words on the page.
yeah. So that would be also your tip, right? For somebody who thinks they have writer's block to just start with free writing. Mm-hmm.
Every time. Or sometimes I say to people who I'm working with, I say, oh, I'm really struggling this week to write my next chapter. So I say, okay, try some free writing. But sometimes writers get to a point where they've done so much free writing, maybe they've been doing it for years. They're not so excited by that idea. I say, okay, why don't you, if they have a kid, I'll say, well, just write a story for your daughter. Just forget about your book. Just spend 5 minutes and write a little fairy tale to read your daughter at night. Or it's COVID, you haven't seen your friend in a long time. Why don't you just write a little story about a fun memory you have with your girlfriend and email it to her? Like,
Whoa.
just anything that's fun, that puts the joy back in the process, that's, for other people, not about your own creative angst and anxieties and insecurities, which we all have, right? And sometimes we just have to accept them
Yeah.
and focus on something else, do something fun. So that's another way where you can kind of just get the muscle. It's like exercise, right? Just get the muscle moving, and then it kind of
Oh, so
goes from there.
it is a muscle. We need to train
So,
it, right?
so yeah, yeah.
And do you write every day yourself? A little
No,
bit?
I
No?
don't every day. I probably should, but I don't really believe in too many shoulds.
Yeah.
I mean, I write every day if you count the fact that I edit other people's work. Like I work
Mm.
in some way in writing every day. It might not be actually writing my own work, but I will be editing someone else's work, or I'll be, reading students' homework from my class, or so I engage with writing every day in some way, but sometimes it's as an editor, sometimes it's, in different capacities.
Nice.
Um,
Yeah.
it's difficult. I mean, a lot of people struggle to write every day just because it's hard to do anything every day, um, because that's just the nature of life and
Yeah.
but try and do as much as you can.
Yeah, super nice. Wow, I got so much value from this already, from this conversation with you. And when is your next workshop, or when is the next possibility to work with you and to meet you?
Yeah, so I have a course open right now. So my introduction to memoir writing course registration is open right now for a session that starts in May, first week of May. So that class is a little bit different from a lot of online classes because it's completely live, completely in person. So it's I can't even remember what day of the week it is right now, but I think it's May 6th, the first day. So I think that's a Tuesday. It's either a Tuesday or a Thursday. So that's a 6-week class. So that is open right now for registration on my website. But that's kind of it for now, because I am fully booked for one-on-ones until June. I'm fully booked for editing and one-on-one coaching.
Awesome. You have
Yes.
lots of
Yeah,
work.
it's really exciting, but it's
Nice.
also kind of unfortunate because I want to work with everyone.
Say
So
cheers to that.
yes, I don't have a drink yet. That's after this it'll be perfect time.
Friday. I'm celebrating the weekend already.
Well, it's
Like,
different time zone, so for you it's
oh,
like
right, of course.
Friday. For me it's only 3:30 in the afternoon, but after this I'll have a little end of the week glass of
Oh,
wine. Um,
nice.
but yeah, so I have the class in May, and then I'm not quite sure yet when I'll be doing the class again. I'll probably not be doing the class again until maybe September.
Mm-hmm.
So that's kind of the number one thing right now. But people can always feel free to add me on Facebook or social media and connect, and
Yeah,
definitely answer questions always.
awesome.
Send me
Wow.
a DM. I'll try and help if you have a question.
Yeah, awesome. Really nice. Thank you so much for this inspiring conversation.
Thank you.
And yeah, and I will see you soon. I'm really happy that you are in the group, that you are part of this community. And I'm very grateful and happy that we had this conversation
Me too.
today.
Yeah. Thanks again.
Okay. I will say bye-bye to everybody. I'll see you soon, everyone.